Hello YouTube and welcome to the nation of free to play. I'm Mr. Mondstadt and today I want to talk about one element in Genshin that used to be the solution for almost any combat scenario but has not received a buff in so long. I want to talk about Dendro. The Dendro element is the latest element in Genshin Impact and was introduced during the Sumeru patches back in 3.0. It quickly became one of the most beloved elements in the game, especially for F2P accounts, since most of its damage comes from transformative reactions and does not require crazy crit builds on your characters. With the right combination of elements, Dendro enabled new reactions that could deal with almost any abyss floor easily and get you 36 stars. However, today in version 5.6, the meta of the game has changed once again and Dendro has slowly but surely fallen off in the tier lists. In this video I want to talk about what happened, why the element is no longer as strong as it used to be, and what would need to happen in the future in order to make Dendro more relevant once again. And if one were to look up the elements for the upcoming Imaginary Theater, one could think that a change is coming sooner than later. First up, what happened to Dendro over the last year? Well, the short answer would be nothing, and that is exactly where the problem starts. Dendro element used to shine due to its multiple strong reactions with other elements. Spread, Quicken Aggravate, Bloom, Burgeon, or of course Hyper Bloom were some of the best reactions in the game and often the secret trick to clear floor 12 of Spiral Abyss. However, these reactions obviously rely on good characters that can make use of Dendro's benefits, meaning lots of elemental application and off or on field damage. These units are characters like Nahida, Tainari, Alhaitham, yeah even Yayao, Collei or Dendro MC were used all the time. Of course, mono Dendro was never an option either, so you would need other units that synergize well with a green crew. I'm talking about Nilou, Thoma, Kuki, Xingqiu, Yelan, Sino. The list of potential allies is long. However, the question at stake is, what happened to Dendro in the last year? If we look at the Dendro units that were released since the start of Fontaine to this day, we only have two characters on our list, Emily and Kinich. What do these units have in common? Exactly, they focus on the forgotten Dendro reaction, Burning. When Pyro meets Dendro, Burning occurs and leaves, no pun intended, a burning aura on enemies. If we take a look at the current Abyss, a very useful gadget for some Madland enemies, but not the crazy new transformative reaction. In other words, there is a reason why nobody was playing Burning before Emily's release, and why you're probably still not playing it unless you have to fight opponents with an annoying mechanic, such as the Papilla or the Lava Dragon statue. But hey, introducing units who buff an otherwise pretty weak reaction is a good thing. Sharus did that for Overload, Escoffier does that for Freeze, so no reason to complain. However, regarding these two Dendro units, they are both 5-star characters, so definitely more of an elite team core than the go-to F2P option. Also, while Kinich will get his rerun in a few days, there's still no sight of Emily's first rerun, so even if you would want to play Burning, it's not like you had many options to get them. With that all said, my point is less about the two units who were released since 4.0, it's more about the units who were not released. What do you mean by that? Well, as I said, Dendro does not work on its own, but you need the right characters to go with your team. But if we look back, which character is there that really wants Dendro in their best teams? Linne? Lynette? Framine? No. Növia or Risley? Not really. Farina? Nope. Charlotte? Navia? Negative. Chanyun, Gaming, Kiori, Alekino, Sichuan? Any of the Nathan units except Kinich? You could argue for Clarin, but her spread aggravate teams are simply worse than her overload options. Yeah, even Taser is probably better with Auron. The only unit who benefits from Dendro is Sethos, but he didn't really leave the biggest impact in the game, especially without his C6. So, in almost 2 years, the best non-burning Dendro teams did not change. It's still Nahida, Xingqiu, Kuki, Thoma, Nilou, Alhaitham, all the old characters who made Dendro a thing in the first place. So yeah, this answers the first question of what happened to Dendro over the last 2 years, but that does not explain why it fell off as an element yet. Let's dive a bit deeper. Dendro reactions and especially Hyper Bloom are still very viable options in many scenarios, especially in the overworld. When it comes to endgame content though, the situation changed. This graph shows the HP increase of Spiral Abyss over the last years. And as you can see, the amount of hit points you have to deplete in time has doubled since the Sumeru patches. And this trend continues. Now you might say, so what, I can still 36 star every Abyss easily? While that might be true, the amount of times you play an Aggravate or Hyper Bloom team to do so has probably reduced though, hasn't it? The issue with Dendro is the fact that most of its damage comes from transformative reactions, which means the things that matter the most are the character's level, talents, and amount of elemental mastery. But the amount of damage you can do with a Hyper Bloom team per rotation is limited. How? Well, once you got your units to level 90, maxed out their talents, and gave your cookie, let's say 1000 EM, that's all you can do. That is the damage ceiling. You won't do more damage than that. But if the bosses in Abyss get tankier every patch, the damage ceiling won't be enough anymore. You won't get a unit beyond level 90 or give them 2000 EM, it's just not possible, and while the current Abyss might still be clearable with Hyper Bloom, at least the first sight, it's only a matter of time. The same is true for Virgin or Bloom teams as well, of course. But is there not a damage ceiling for every team in Genshin? Yeah, even every character? Yes, to some extent. Let me come back to the Overload reaction as an example. It used to be one of the worst reactions in the game, and to be honest, the reaction in itself is still very underwhelming. But Sharus gave this team core a comeback. Freeze is super bad and no one should be playing it. Sounds wrong? Well, go back 2 patches or so. It's only because of Escoffier that people are dusting off their Ayakas right now. And this is true for other reactions or units as well. Melt got buffed with Sidlali, Taser with Auron, Vape Mualani, Xylonen shreds resistance of anything, right? Well, not anything. You see that Dendro is the forgotten element it did not receive a buff in forever. While other elements got newer updated DPSs or supports and therefore are still very relevant in the meta, the same is not true for Dendro. Also, as a disclaimer, I'm not saying that Dendro teams are unplayable, but compared to other team cores, I think I made my point clear. I hope Hoyo will do something about Dendro soon before it becomes the new Cryo. But what exactly could they do? What would need to happen for Dendro to be OP again? Before I talk about that, please do me a favor and check whether you are subscribed already, because over 90% of my audience is not, and if you're one of them and enjoy my content, I'd really appreciate it if we could change that. It really helps me in making more videos and costs you literally nothing, so yeah, thanks. Now, what are the potential solutions to make the OG Dendro more relevant again? The first option would be to ascend characters another time and level them further, let's say to level 100 instead of level 90. Transformative reactions such as Bloom, Virgin or Hyper Bloom scale with the level of a character, which is why you should level 90 your cookie, for example, in Hyper Bloom teams. The damage increase of level 90 to 80 is over 30%, so imagine how strong these reactions would become if we could go higher than that. However, this would also come with a significant downside, meaning the amount of resources and resin it would take to do so. We would probably need around 300 hero swits to go from 90 to 100, plus the Mora, plus the boss drops for another ascension, and so on. At this point, the question is whether that would be worth it, and it would not be a buff exclusive to Dendro teams, but to other units as well. So while this scenario is definitely possible, I don't believe it is the most likely solution. Another way would be to simply introduce new units that have specific Dendro reactions in mind. A Sharus for spread aggravate, for example, or a support who can shred Dendro resistance by 40% or something like that. A unit like that would not even have to have Dendro vision, it could also be an electro carry who gets more stacks the more Dendro units there are in the party. I mean, the last 5-star Electro unit who really prefers Dendro teams over Overload with Charus was Cyno. I think an update is overdue. It could also be a character that increases elemental mastery significantly. If the EM ceiling was not 1000 but 2000, suddenly Bloom, Burgeon or Hyper Bloom are back. You'd probably have to restrict any EM buff like that though, like it only works if you have at least 2 Dendro units in your party. I think the idea that Hoyo is gonna introduce a Dendro buff character is not too far-fetched. The question is how accessible a unit like that would be and how versatile they would be outside of Dendro teams. The balancing is the most important factor here. If you don't like the idea of a character, a new artifact set would also be possible. But personally, I'm not the biggest fan of that because it's always annoying to go back to the farming mines after you've spent thousands of resin in the older domain. All of these things are possible solutions, but there might be another way as well. And this might be the most interesting idea, to be honest, because the devs could add a new Dendro reaction to the game. I mean, think about it. There are some elements left that do not synergize with Dendro at all right now. Geo, Anemo or Cryo? There is potential, and as I said earlier in the video, maybe the new Imaginary Theater for June could be a hint at what there is to come. The starting lineup is already in the Genshin Wiki, so it's not a secret anymore. We will get Dendro, Electro and Cryo characters for the next season. And to be honest, I don't think they want us to play Superconduct. Sure, Spread, Aggravate, Quicken is an option, but that cannot be all, right? So either this season of Theater is gonna be the worst one so far, or maybe Hoyo is cooking something up. Maybe they will try out a new Dendro reaction and see how players will react to it. But regardless of whether this will happen in this theater or not, that does not change the fact that it would be beneficial to the game and especially to Dendro to add another reaction to Genshin. I'd be excited for that, and older units could get buffed this way as well. So, to sum things up, Dendro definitely lost its #1 spot when it comes to the strongest element in the game. However, that does not have to stay this way forever. Dendro units still have all the potential in the world, and of course transformative reactions such as Hyperbloom should still be in the repertoire of every F2P. But I think a Dendro update, a version 2.0 so to speak, is required and will hopefully come to the game soon. Whether it is in the form of a new character, a new reaction, or maybe even both is up to the developers, but I hope Dendro will come back to the spotlight during the not cried patches. And with that, we've reached the end of this week's video. What are your thoughts on Dendro? Do you still play it, and would you like a buff? Also, if you have an interesting idea for a future Dendro characters kit, please share it in the comments down below. I'd be really interested in what you're coming up with. I hope you liked this video, and if so, please leave a like or subscribe to the channel, I'd really appreciate it. Anyway, thanks again for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!